On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
There's so much surprise that there are Jews in India that some people are almost like incredulous. It's almost like they don't believe you.
Shalom and welcome to Rivkush, the CJN podcast with Jews of color talking about everything Jewish.
It's time we talk about more than just the tragedy, the hardships we've overcome and the savagery. It's time we focus on what's woven in the tapestry, the roots that connect us to our truth and the canopy of every single branch.
My guest today is Zilka Joseph. I am so pleased to have her. A little bit about Zilka. She was born in Mumbai and grew up in Kolkata, India. She's part of the Bene Israel community, one of the actual oldest Jewish community in India. She is an award-winning and internationally published author, poet. Her sixth collection, yes, sixth collection of poems is called Sweet Melita, Memories of a Bene Israel Woman. It honors the history and culture of an ancient micro-minority of Jews in India through her culinary traditions and memories. Welcome. And hopefully I didn't butcher pronunciation because I think I did again.
Right. Such a pleasure to meet you. And I'm just so pleased to be part of your wonderful podcast. And it's really wonderful to see the platform that you provide to all of us and for us to share our stories and get to know one another and to get to know about communities that otherwise do not, get as much attention in the mainstream world. So I'm just very happy to share.
I'm so happy to have you. Because you nailed it right there. I think it's so important because your story, Zilka, is, yes, it's the story of your community and your memoirs from it, but it's also the story of all of us as Jewish people. It's a shared story. And I'm just so happy you're here to talk about it. I'm so happy that you've produced a body of work that also speaks to your community and your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's dive in. So tell me a little bit about the community in India, because I think it's really important that people hear about the community, what it was like growing up, and how does your community interact with the larger community, with non-Jewish community also, because I think it's important to know.
Thank you. Let me do a little bit of the historical background so that you get a sense of where it began and where we are now. There was a shipwreck on the west coast of India, not far from Mumbai. Most people know where Mumbai is. The date that it is believed that these people were shipwrecked there was 175 BCE. And there was always trade between the continents in these countries, the Middle East and the East, right? So it is not unusual for ships to be traversing that area. So it as far as the story goes, there were 7 couples on that ship that survived, that were washed ashore and survived, and that the villagers that lived in the area then, and it was not even called India then, right? It wasn't Israel on this side. It wasn't even Judea, pre-Judaic times. And here in India, there were just, some kingdoms more than anything else. So we're talking about like way, way back in the past. And the villagers probably brought them into their huts and probably, that's how the story began. And then they settled there. They worked as oil pressers, as I've written in the preface to my book. And from then on, they became Indianized. And that's why the Bene Israel are called the Indian Jews because we adopted the clothing, we adopted the foods, we adopted some of their rituals even, while still staying true to some of the main tenets of Judaism.
So can you please give me some examples of what that would be?
Sure. So among the Indians, we have so many festivals.
Yes.
So many festivals, right? So very often it was, they were part of the fabric of the villages. So it was not unknown for them to eat local foods. But what's important is that they kept kosher. And they had, there was 4 or 5 things which I've mentioned in another poem of mine that kept them apart from the regular, the foodways and So instead of milk, they often used coconut milk. So coconut becomes like a major a part of their diet in every sense. That was one of the distinguishing characteristics because they learned, people from the outside world realized that they were keeping some very ancient traditions. And this was one of them. And I wanted to make one more interesting point here. Yeah. They were unaware of the existence of Hanukkah.
Because it's outside of our readings. Yeah, because it's outside of our Torah.
And Hanukkah happened much later, right? In the second
temple.
And that is one proof that the historians use to say how ancient this community was.
Oh, wow. When you're talking about coconut, one of your poems is Sweet Malida.
Yes, Malida is the name of that dish with the rice and the fruit.
Right, because when you first look at the title, I thought, oh, it's a person. Right? It's a person. Until I came across that poem, and it talks about, exactly what it is, and it talks about the coconut. And I actually flashed to kind of like, my background, my Jamaican background with the coconut and grating the coconut and using
exactly.
It was just so cool to me.
We are coastal people.
Yeah.
We are. You're an island person, we're coastal people. And Bombay is an island. So if you want to call it an island person, we're both island people.
Exactly.
So the whole coast, anything to do with fish and rice and coconut and lentils, so very much the same.
Well, absolutely.
Very much the same.
Well, one of the larger populations in Jamaica are the population of people whose origins are from India. And actually, just to make it a little personal, my grandmother on my father's side was part Indian.
Wow. That is so cool, Rivka.
And I think that's part of, I'm a huge fan of Indian food, huge fan. And
so much of the food has been influenced by Indian food.
Exactly.
All your curry and your roti and your puffs and your patties. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Absolutely. So, when people say, where do you want to go to eat? I'm like, I want to go to an Indian restaurant, but I want to go to, I don't want, McDonald's version of Indian food. I want to go to.
Exactly. The real stuff.
The real stuff. So I get it. So,
but there was a huge, these are old populations in Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, the islands, sugarcane growing, and there were indentured labor brought from
they were.
the interior parts of India.
Absolutely.
So there is a huge intermingling.
Absolutely.
And it's a very old population for sure. Yeah.
So now tell me about you growing up within this community.
So I was born in Bombay because my parents lived there. I had relatives there. My parents also grew up there. And my father was a marine engineer, so he sailed the world a lot, as you will see in my book. So he brought, the world's culture back to us, and we were brought up in a very, very liberal fashion. He was transferred. His company transferred him from Bombay to Calcutta when I was around 4 years old. So even though I am from Bombay and my main part of my community is there, I grew up in Calcutta. And we became friends with a lot of the Baghdadi Jewish family, one family in particular. But in general, we're not religious. So ours was more a cultural connection. And for me, too, it's a cultural connection. It's my connection with my ancestors to some extent.
It's legacy, too.
I never thought of it that way when I began writing this book, but now I feel, I won't say the weight of it, but I feel that I hope that this book will preserve something that is getting lost or getting dissipated over the years.
Yes. And can I say, the fact that it is it's not just a book. It's not like a recipe book. It's not a narrative. It's the method that you chose to present this work that also adds another layer to it, in the fact that it's poetry. And I will, full confession, I probably should have paid more attention to in English class. There is structure of poems. But I can see that there's different structures there.
It's changing, Rivka. Yeah. What we studied in school is not it's not your grandmother's poetry anymore.
No, it's not. So even I was like,
it's so experimental that some of it just goes,
because even one of them.
So mine is a little bit of a balance there.
Yeah, because even one of them was What Ravens Do. And I remember when I first looked at it, I'm like, how do I read this? Do I read it across? Do I read it down? And remember, you're speaking to, like, I'm the ignorant when it comes to things like that. So, and then I started reading and I'm like, well, actually I can read it across. And I can also read it down. Like, so it's fascinating because
there are all these experimental forms that people use. And basically, like, there's a type of poem called a contrapuntal.
Okay.
Very fancy name.
Yes.
But it's basically written in 2 columns, which you can read both ways. And of course, because it's fragmented language, it's symbolic.
Yeah.
And you can, so there are versions of 3 columns and 4 columns and all of that.
It's
so
fascinating to me.
This was just fun to do.
It's
a lot of fun
to
do. Because we start shifting words and images to see that, how does it make any sense on the way down?
It was super. It was like, it was awesome. It was actually awesome because I was just
Thank you, Rivka.
Oh man. So then at some point in your story, you ended up in the United States of America. Why didn't you come to Canada? But we'll talk about it. You ended up in the United States.
It could have been Canada. I did look it up.
Okay.
They wanted a lot of money. We didn't have any money.
Okay, so fair enough. The US
if you have a whole lot of money, you can apply. So we ticked all the boxes except the money box.
You see, Canada. God love Canada.
I have relatives, I had relatives there too. So I did think about it because we were both looking for a new life, a new break. I was a school teacher and my husband worked in a bank. And, we were at the point where it was just exist. You could just do the regular stuff.
Right.
And both of us wanted to travel, do news. I mean, just what people want for themselves to grow and not feel stuck, So that's why we began to look for alternatives. And around the Y2K time, when all the computer stuff was happening, America was bringing a lot of people from India and other places in the world to come and work here. So that's where my husband got a break, and then I came with him. I already, my background was in literature. I was teaching literature. I was already writing a little bit in India, but not in a serious way.
Right.
I mean, I had been published there. But after coming here, then I began to really concentrate on the writing, and I started getting published. And I thought, okay, good. This is something good is happening here.
It's like you flourished, you opened up, you grew.
Yeah, it was a slow process, Rivka, because it takes a very long time to feel settled. I don't think it was so much of it was a learning experience. So much of it was feeling your way through things. You're a stranger.
Yes.
I was in the suburbs of Michigan. So it was very different for me, very different. And my previous book, In Our Beautiful Bones, is the one that has a lot of the stories about facing racism and different kinds of oppression in the world. And also I bring in the aspects of British colonialism that I grew up with, which is another thing we have in common,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Under the thumb.
Only India didn't become a Commonwealth. They didn't become a Commonwealth. So, they had independence in a very different way. So our backgrounds, everything we studied was British. English was the language in most schools. Government schools still taught in the languages of the states. So then the ones who spoke English and studied English, had more opportunities, and all the same thing that you experienced, you'll
very
experience
different
in the island.
Yeah, exactly.
Any colonized
country, the closer you are to British,
absolutely,
the better off you are, right? Whether it's even as far as, never mind education aspect of the language, even as far as how you looked. If you looked more white and more British, so to speak, you had more advantages. Correct. And it's hard. There's still shades of that in the islands for sure.
Absolutely.
It's going to take generations to get out from under that mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so ingrained in us, so then the way the gaze, we become this person just like the other person, and we're learning to interpret, is this, so no, absolutely, those things are absolutely there. And where education was concerned, it's very interesting because in the history of the British in India, they began to impose English teaching in a lot of the schools and all of that. But it's very interesting because they considered Indian languages and Sanskrit inferior. So in my book, in fact, I'll just show it to you since you can see. In my previous book, In Our Beautiful Bones, I have a whole section at the back that talks about Lord Macaulay, who made all these laws. And it's called the Macaulay Minute, where he actually says, and I can quote from here, "It is, I believe, no exaggeration to say that all the historical information which has been collected from all the books written in the Sanskrit language is less valuable than what may be found in the most paltry abridgments used at preparatory schools in England."
Oh my goodness!
Yes, so I have excerpts from the act that he passed, the Charter Act of 1813, telling the British that we need to open more schools and create a whole educational system in India.
He basically said in flowery language, the indigenous people are stupid and not worthwhile, and we are the ones.
And Sanskrit, the most ancient languages.
They forgot that they were the new people. They're the new people.
Exactly. But that's where the erasure happens, right?
Exactly.
With, in communities, the dominant culture begins to erase what's there. Exactly. And you and I are, part of
that history.
Right? You say, no, we are here.
Yeah, exactly. And to rise up, it's very, very, very difficult.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
So in terms of integrating in, how was it integrating in the Jewish community in the United States?
Not being a religious person, I didn't really seek out any particular community, but most of it was like when I met with people.
Okay.
And I would mention that I'm Jewish, and some people would be very interested, some people would dismiss it. I mean, I had across the board. I can give you a range of reactions. And a lot of the time, I even when I'm like in a social setting, I don't necessarily talk about it unless it's relevant.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yes, but now that I'm working, I've done this book, and I'm doing presentations,
Right.
and I'm talking in a lot of venues. I'm going deep into the cultural aspects, not just the religious aspect, the cultural aspects, and it becomes a teaching tool for me to reach out and talk to people about this. Otherwise, what would happen very often, Rivka, is that in social settings, somebody would introduce me, and first of all, being Indian, then where do you live,
Yes.
and where are you from, and all the questions we normally get.
Right.
So if I open this other aspect of Jewishness, then it would be, in my whole evening would be trying to explain things to people.
And it's a
so
lot.
I began to draw some boundaries there. I would say, oh, there's information here. I could send you, information. There are these books or something like. So I learned to do that because it would just be so confusing for me, and it would be exhausting. And that still happens because sometimes I feel this having to explain all the time becomes very, very difficult. Even if it's well meant.
Yes.
Even if it's well meant, and sometimes it's I won't say it's not well meant, but it becomes, there's so much surprise that there are Jews in India that some people are almost like incredulous. It's almost like they don't believe you, and instead of dealing with some of these kind of ignorances or dismissiveness or whatever, or wherever they're coming from. I don't know. Sometimes it's genuine confusion, because they have not been exposed to the rest of the world, or they have been so sheltered. And sometimes it's the whole culture focuses on one part of the world and forgets that there were Jews all over the world.
Scattered peoples and people who have, the diaspora has happened even more so because of persecution. So the corners and trade, people forget that it's not only persecution, but there was trade in the world forever. Right.
If you look at the movements of the Baghdadi Jews, they had set up trading posts everywhere, and they were empires. So for me, it's so much part of my exploration of all of us that I feel, the rest of the world needs to know about.
Jews and non-Jews, because you're
Absolutely.
right. You're right.
Absolutely. Everybody around us.
Because I met with the same like incredulous looks. You can see it on their face as they try. And then I say, sometimes in presentations, I say, you should not be surprised to hear about Jews from India or anywhere else outside of Eastern Europe. I said, because quite frankly, if you're reading Torah, if you're reading the Chumash, you will hear mention of Ethiopia, you will hear mention of India, but I do not hear mention of Poland. So, know that these communities pre-existed any community in Eastern Europe.
Absolutely.
And so we shouldn't, in fact,
these are old communities,
ancient
very
communities.
Ancient.
So if anything, I should be looking with shock when you say you're from Poland. I should be like, really? And not the other way around.
That whole shift happened, right?
Yeah.
That whole shift happened.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, I've been asked, why do you think that has happened? Or how do you think that has happened? Because Western cultures are dominant cultures.
Yes, they are.
And it seems to be, part of mainstream. And whatever's mainstream takes over. And I feel that, and it, I do know of communities here who have sponsored programs for people from other Jewish communities to come and speak. I too was invited to somebody's home. So there are communities that are interested and are reaching out and are embraced and want to know more about the world, but it's not like that everywhere. And I think my knowledge base is not large enough to tell you, where it's happening or where it's not. But that tends to happen when one is the dominant
Absolutely.
culture.
Absolutely. And it's not just even
And
within
then that
Judaism.
becomes, so when you say I'm Jewish, they're thinking of like Tevye and Golda.
I usually say Barbara Streisand and Woody Allen or Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes.
But you're right. That's exactly what they think.
And there's nothing wrong
Absolutely
with that.
not.
But to know that there is more, and I'm hoping with more changes and more voices coming about and being represented more, that there will be more richness and there will be this ability to see beyond, what your world is and enjoy it, not feel like, threatened
that
or
it's taking
whatever,
over your culture or anything like that. It's actually adding to everybody's.
Right.
So has there been much emigration to Israel from your community of Bene Israel?
So when the land of Israel was formed and became a country, there was a lot of migration to Israel. The Bene Israeli community, a large number moved, a large number stayed on, because in many of them, being Indian, we are very loyal to India and we love India. So we are very Indian in our food and our habits and all of that. Like my father was, we didn't even consider it. Didn't even cross our minds that we wanted to go. This was our land. We were happy about Israel. We're happy for whoever wanted to leave. We have relatives there, and that wasn't the point. We were happy where we were. But whoever was left in India, they still thrive. Their community grows. It's still very small. So when I say community grows, we're not talking, in terms of millions and billions.
Right.
We're talking in terms of hundreds and a few thousand.
So I have a question for you, and it's a question that a non-writer always, I think, asks people, especially poets. What poem, and please don't roll your eyes.
I'll roll my eyes.
What poem is, I don't want to say your favorite, but what poem in your book you feel the most in your heart? Like it was, maybe it was one that was the hardest to write, but which one would you say, this one is mine?
Laddu Makers is a prose piece, so it's kind of long. But of course, all the food poems I love.
Yes.
So maybe I'll ask you to pick one.
Well, I already did.
Which one is your favorite?
I like the sweet Melita.
All right. I would love to read that.
Okay.
And I just wanted to finish answering my question to you. Your question to me was probably the one that moves me the most is Once Upon a Shabbat. And that's my last poem in the book. And I would probably tear up if I read that. There are some poems I find hard to read in public, even from my other books. But I would love to read Sweet Malida, Rivka. Is that good?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Sweet Malida. A mix of water, softened, flattened rice, sugar, dried fruits and nuts, was a dish made for Shabbat or for breaking our fasts. Cooling, light on the palate, and to the body and spirit, it was welcome in the heat of day or night. We had many foods in common with our Muslim, Christian, and Hindu neighbors, and we often celebrated together their festivals or ours. I relished particularly fresh coconut, the regional staple, its milk or its flesh added to almost every dish. But this was to me the best way to eat it, finely grated by my mother's hands, left unsweetened and sprinkled haphazardly on the malida. Juicy threads with a fleck of stubborn brown kernel here and there, that sometimes crunched in your teeth like sand, and you winced and you swallowed it, knowing that there was no simpler or purer or truer form than that.
I love it.
Thank you.
People can't see it, but I was like, I closed my eyes so that I can hear not just your voice, but you can just visualize it and just really, I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Rivka.
I love it. So thank you so much. And,
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you've also will give our listeners food for thought about really finding about information about all of us, starting with your community. Because as I said before, it is our collective history. And part of the legacy is not just the words that you write, it's also sharing and having other people share the words that you write so that the legacy grows and spreads. So I think that's really important.
Thank you, Rivka.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity to share.
And I
want to tell you, I have several Rivkas in my life.
We Rivkas.
And I love the name Rivka.
Oh my goodness, thank you. So I highly recommend, please get Sweet Melida, Memories of a Bene Israel Woman by Zilka Joseph. I believe you can find it on Amazon, but just Google it. Buy it wherever it is available. Also look at her other works.
And I do have a website, so I'd be delighted to have people write to me.
Okay, so there you go. So thank you again.
Thanks, Rivka.
Rivkush is hosted by me, Rivka Campbell. We're produced and edited by Michael Freeman and the CJN Podcast Network. Our theme music is by Westside Gravy. If you like this episode, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. To support our work and everything else the CJN does, visit thecjn.ca/donate to make a monthly donation and receive a charitable tax receipt. Thanks for listening.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.